our last day. Oh, I know, boo. But that's okay, we got a really, really awesome lineup for you today. I know you're very excited, as am I, so let's get to it. Please join me in welcoming, first off, Nicholas Vince! Put your hands together, y'all. Next we have Simon Bamford! And I'm not going to introduce him the way he asked me to, because that's just
Please
me.
do.
No, I can't.
No.
You can do it.
He's, ladies and gentlemen, this next gentleman identifies as an arsehole. Mr. Craig Sheffer.
Give it up for Craig.
That was my pleasure.
Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
It's
Yes.
a pleasure to have you all here. How's the weekend been?
You can't go wrong when you're in Florida, can you? It's absolutely lovely. I was here last year as well, but I'm staying for a few extra days to go and do some theme park. Serious theme parks.
Awesome.
Yeah, I did the Haunted Nights at Universal.
Did you?
Yeah, I screamed like a 6-year-old, and it's just like, why do I do these things to myself? But I did make sure that my mate Chris was walking in front of me, because when we went to them in Los Angeles a few years ago, he kept on coming up behind me and tickling me at the side, which just made it worse, really. It's just...
Could you reenact you screaming like a 6-year-old?
Not with this voice.
I don't want to go there. No, I'm not going there again. No. Shut up.
Sorry.
But we do know that I do scream louder than a row of 16-year-old schoolgirls. Because I went to see a performance of The Woman in Black in London, and there was a school party in front of me, and I just remember at one point I screamed so loudly, and they all looked round behind me to see.
My watch is telling me that I'm in, and oh, it looks like you've had a fall. Emergency call. No. That's
Meanwhile, back at the panel. Yeah.
I'm having a great weekend because I get entertained by these two. During the day and then at night at dinner, I have the best times in the world.
I'm so glad he added at dinner.
That's an important addition. All right, so let's get right into why we're here. I wanted to ask you all, each of you.
Why are we here? Is this a general question for the group? Why are we here? I didn't know it was going to be this deep.
Yeah, I know.
Why are we here in life?
Talking about humanity and existentialism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I did want to. Sorry, go ahead.
Why? I'm just waiting for the answer.
I don't have the answer.
Oh.
Maybe you do. I'm just here to ask the questions.
Sorry. Okay, you go ahead. I'll shut up.
No, not
Like as if.
Please don't. Please don't. Okay. Let's get real for a second. Okay, so each of you have worked with Clive in some capacity over the years, and the projects that you've worked on have become classics, cult classics, and I wanted to know how you would describe his directing style and what makes him unique as a visionary in the horror genre.
That's a very big question.
So we were getting real.
Let's start with Craig.
All right.
Wow, that was a long time ago. I guess the thing about Clive is he's just so human. I've done like 100 movies in Hollywood and worked with a million people, but there's just a depth to his soul and a kindness, and that's very, very, very rare, and that's why we love the man. So as far as artistic stuff, I don't know, he always kind of just let me do what I did and only butted in when I did something glaringly stupid. So that was awfully nice. He kind of let me create my character and my world. And when we were shooting in Pinewood in London, we were in these huge studios with these amazing sets and all of the bridges going across like way up high. It's his imagination that was brought to life, and he obviously as a director oversees that. And then all of us would get into makeup early in the morning, and you know, the things once again that he drew and he created, we would have, oh my God, we would have like, what, 30 monsters in different degrees of outfits and dress, and everybody be running around backstage. And anyway, that's the world that he created on paper and oversaw on film. And yeah, I just think he's a unique visionary and an amazing human being.
When I first met Clive, I was, nobody knew who he was. We were doing fringe theatre in London, and he was concentrating on his writing, but he was also an actor actually at that point, although he decided early on that that's not what he wanted to pursue. But one of the things I loved about him was that whoever he met, he would be genuinely interested in, because, and he told me that everybody he met had some characteristics about them that he would be able to use in a story or in a character, and so he would just be genuinely interested in everybody and constantly kind of making little mental notes about a little tick that you might have, or the way you walk, or the way that you talk. And I think he's done that all through his life. When he first saw me, we were at drama school,
Yes.
and with Richard Brake, I found out recently, although not the same time, but Richard Brake,
yes,
as in the Night King
yes.
from Game of Thrones,
Game of Thrones.
went to the same drama school as two Cenobites. Who would have known? I've lost my thread now. He came to see me in a production of King Lear, and in this, it was a kabuki-style production of King Lear, and I was playing the fool, and all I was wearing was a pair of pantaloons, and he'd obviously made a note of the way I looked and the way I was, and when we ended up doing Nightbreed, who should I be playing but a character that was very similar to the Fool in a pair of pantaloons, and as a sidekick to a character that was very similar to King Lear, which was Doug Bradley's character, whose name I can't remember. Louwsburg, thank you. His brain cells are less fried than mine.
Oh, we both lost. How soon after you graduated did you join the dog company?
Clive asked me to join the dog company as soon as I graduated. It was my first job.
Yeah, so it was literally, Simon and I, although we were in the same year to begin with, we actually graduated. I graduated in January, you graduated like March, April, I think, the same year. And then I got to meet Clive later, by which stage it was just as the books of Blood were being published. I met him at a party and ended up by modelling for the hardback versions of the books of Blood. They published this paperback versions first. So I modelled for him. And and then he just said, would you like to be in a film? I just remember laughter. Clive is a really funny guy. And just cracking jokes and so on. And I think that but also he listened. He's quite happy to acknowledge when he made Hellraiser, and I have had this story confirmed, he went to the local library to get a book out on how to direct films, but somebody else had borrowed it. So by the time he got on set, I think he properly said, okay, what do we do now? Because he was genuinely asking the people, Robin Vigeon, who is an incredibly talented and experienced cinematographer, how does this work? And his producer, the first assistant AD, Andy. Again, he and his producer Chris Figg had surrounded Clive with a really experienced crew. How does all this work? And he learned he got Robin Vigeon to explain different lenses to them on how you should use them.
So Robin shot Hellraiser 2?
Yes.
Wow.
Hellraiser 1 and 2 and Nightbreed.
Wow.
In fact,
I worked with him like 2 other times on 2 other movies. I can't remember what they were, but so over the years I kept working with him again and again, and he's just so great.
Yeah, in fact, that whole cruise.
Fast.
He was lecturing film cinematography at a university. I'm not sure if he still is.
I think he's retired. I think he's still with us. What I do know is I've met students of his who just said how amazing he was, because he was less about theory, more about go out and make a movie. Go out and get a camera, shoot some stuff, learn by your mistakes, you know, this is how it works, and so on.
The other great thing about Clive is that whereas some directors will say, this is how I want it, this is how it's going to be, this is my vision, you will do this and you will create this. Clive's the opposite. He'd say, I've got all these ideas, here's these ideas, go away and come back with loads of your own ideas, and then let's all talk about these ideas, and he gets really excited. So he's very creative, and he's very encouraging for everybody to be creative in their own fields as much as they can be. It's slightly different with actors, but certainly from the well, with you anyway.
That was a difficult one.
but with the special effects guys, the special effects guys, he was very encouraging to come up, especially with the four of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I had a couple of conversations about Nightbreed, about the design of my character, Kinski, because in the book it's a character called Jackie in the Cabal, and the makeup, or the creature in the book, Jackie, is described as 2 brothers who share the same face, and they'd made this makeup, and then it just didn't work because they could only have one eye moving. But the other end, it wasn't going to work in close-up. So somebody, I don't know if it was Clive or suddenly I was a Crescent Moon face guy. So, but it was that thing of adapt and change, and you know, I think that's a part of the flexibility. But again, it's just that sense of fun on set. You know, and I think that kind of went around everybody. Certainly on Hellraiser. I think it was tougher at some points on Nightbreed.
I think because of the for me,
Yeah.
Can you guys hear him? Craig?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say this. It was the hardest film I've ever done. So much so that I actually got offered a George Romero movie, and it was called. I don't know what it was called, but in it the guy had no face, right? But I don't remember what it was called. And George Romero, you know, is one of the kings of horror. I would have done it second. Then he was like, "Well, it's a complete face prosthetic," and I was like, "I cannot go through that again," because I mean, it was literally 6 hours to get it on, 3 in the morning till 9.
Yeah.
And another hour and a half to 2 hours to peel it off at night, and it was just.
It's brutal. It really
stressful,
is brutal.
and you couldn't eat because the prosthetics went the whole way down to my lip. And what I didn't know until later was that I was allergic to latex. So my skin underneath would be like bright red when I'd be done, and I'd have like little things. And so the whole time I'm like, it was pretty torturous to on the days, which I think 33 days I had, where I used that makeup.
Wow, I didn't realize that's so much more than I was.
That was pretty stressful.
Simon's makeup in Nightbreed were his nipples.
So my nipples application was really brutal. It was very, very uncomfortable. Sometimes I just said, look, I just can't do it today. And I had a nipple double who
He had the head of Image Animation putting your nipples on one morning, I remember.
He did, but then he taught me how to do it. But I never got an IMDb credit for nipple application, which
seems a shame.
I could probably put that in myself, actually.
You could probably
should. I think it's important that you do.
I think it is. Sorry if there are children here.
Speaking of the prosthetics, obviously the practical effects are legendary. How did being in all of that makeup and prosthetics, how did it impact and influence your performance? Start with
I
Craig.
think I've said it already.
Well, regardless of the latex allergy reaction, how outside of that, how else was your performance influenced by the makeup itself?
Shall I go first?
Sure, go ahead.
So with mine, it was on the day one of shooting. I sat opposite Doug Bradley with the Butterball head on, and I said to him, "Okay, can you tell me? I'm going to do these little gestures inside the makeup. Can you tell me what expressions that the character might be giving out on the top of the makeup?" And after about an hour of this, my expression is inside of it, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. He said, "Nope." So there was no way I could make any of Butterball's face move in any other way apart from. So I realized that the only thing I could do was if I stuck because it was 3 inches thick, stick my tongue out as far as it could go. It just looked like he was licking his lips. And then I thought, okay, so I can use my body, but then I had a great big fiberglass dome over my shoulders with latex on the front of it and then leather wrapped around that. So I couldn't really use my body either. So it was limiting. And we were both blind and virtually deaf and couldn't breathe through my nose, and then I had dentures. We had a toss-up, but I could use my tongue, you could use your teeth.
Yeah.
And you wanted to use your tongue.
I wanted to use my tongue because I had this great... So once they got me into the makeup, I'd done... they got me into the full thing, and I ran my tongue over the prosthetic teeth. And I just remember this girl going, "Ah, that's horrible." I thought, "Great, tell Clive what he said." "Sorry, Simon's, that's what Simon can do." It's like, so
that's all that Simon can do.
That's all that Simon can do. Yeah, that's all that Simon can do. I think somebody once said to me at a convention, "It's a very measured performance." And I said, "Yeah, well, because I couldn't do anything. I could walk, I could raise my arms to that level, and that's it. And I could shove my fingers down Ashley's throat, obviously.
They had to face the two of us in the right direction. That we were. First of all, they had to lead us onto the set and tell us that you are on a set now, and this is around you, and the actors are in front of you. And then they would point us in the right direction, and then we would hear action, and we would shuffle forward until we felt this like draft excluder thing on the floor with our feet, and then we'd know we'd hit our mark.
Yeah.
And then if it was really advanced acting, then we might do a third of a turn to the left or something. But that was very advanced for us.
Well, I mean, I was lucky because I actually had more movement because I whole sculpted to my physique leather costume, top to toe. So what they eventually managed to work out is that we couldn't hear, speak or see. The first day, literally standing there, being told what to do, not hearing a word, just standing there. Apparently they said to one of the image animation guys, "Is he thick?"
Where did they get these guys?
And then, so what they did with me, because I had to do fingers in Ashley's mouth and so on, I was able to do, they got me onto set without makeup, because they could get the makeup on in about 20, 30 minutes. Once I was in costume, then it was just fairly straightforward. So they got me onto set. But then it's just a question, it's like learning dance moves. You have to remember exactly, assuming they are going to put you where you started. Okay, it's 3 paces forward, raise your arm, put the other hand around the back of Ash's neck, just so you can kind of feel where the hell you're shoving your fingers. Though I said that, so I've been telling that story, and then I looked at the film again the other day and thought, no, I didn't do that. I just did my fingers. And of course it's Ashley who's doing all the hard work. I'm raising my fingers, she's the one who's
guiding them.
Actually making sure I'm hitting her mouth. Yeah.
I had one, my last scene in Hellraiser 1 was when the house fell on top of me, and they had a big thing above me full of foam bricks and dirt.
Vermiculite.
What's that?
Vermiculite. It was a kind of insulation powder Yeah.
It was a whole
Yeah.
load of shit up here, and the house was supposed to fall on top of me. And before each take, they covered my head in KY jelly to, it was a head fuck. Sorry, no, to get that kind of gloopy look. And I remember them saying, okay, so you're going to raise, because I had to try and stab Kirsty's boyfriend, Steve.
Yes.
They said, okay, so you're going to raise your hand, you're going to go to stab Steve, the thing's going to fall on top of you, and then you fall out of shot. Which is kind of pretty straightforward. Anybody could do it. So I heard action. So I went, okay, so I'm stab him. I hope Steve's there because I have no idea. And I'm standing there thinking, God, this is taking a long time. Okay, I'm trying. How can I fill this moment? Because it's going on forever. Okay. And then I heard cut, and they dropped the whole box with all the stuff all on top of me. But because I got 3 inches of foam latex all over my head and a great big fiberglass dome, I couldn't feel any of it hitting me, so I had no idea that they dropped it, by which point all of this shit is stuck to all the KY jelly all over Butterball's head. And so they very angrily told me that I had to go away for 2 hours while they carefully cleaned it all off, the makeup, and reset everything. And then they had to do the whole thing like a 1920s silent film. So, okay, raise your hand now, raise your hand, okay. And Steve's there, so go to stab him, oh, the house is falling, so the house is hitting you now, the house is hitting, drop out of the shot. So, yeah, acting by numbers. So, yeah. How about yours? You have more.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have anything on my back. I mean, I just had regular clothes on my, I had my leather jacket, my t-shirt, and all that stuff. The only thing for me was, like I said, being tortured with the allergies, and like these guys, I really couldn't move there wasn't much expression you could do because you were, just sealed tight with the rubber and latex, and your face couldn't move a whole lot. So, and I had these fangs in, and I kept poking holes in my bottom lip when I would try to talk or do too much. So, yeah, pretty much torturous for me.
In Nightbreed, the back latex piece I had when my character explodes in the sun, spoilers, was actually, they cast the singer Mark Ullmans to play Onaka, my part, but then because of contractual things with Sony Records, he didn't do it. But all the latex pieces that they modelled were for his body and not mine. But thankfully, we must have been a similar size. And then before each shot for that, they filled my pantaloons up with smoke. An interesting Doug tells a story with when they were first doing Hellraiser, Clive had this idea of filling up his costume with smoke because he wanted it looked like Pinhead was coming out of hell. And they shot this thing, and Clive said it looked great because all this smoke was coming out. But the next day they said they had to reshoot it because it looked like he was on fire. Clive being Clive, like I said before, little note, back of his brain. Simon, we want you to be on fire. We're going to fill your costume up with smoke. And again, he just reused it. So yeah, before each take, I had a little chap came and shoved a hose down my pants and filled me with smoke. Which was fun.
I'm saying nothing.
Blew smoke up my ass.
Because I didn't need to.
Sorry.
Oh my God, I could talk to them all day long. I could just listen to them chat all day long. So I'd like to ask you, before we continue, we are gonna go ahead and start passing it to you guys. So if you do have questions for them, please line up right there. There's a microphone in the center, and then we will get to your questions in a moment. Okay, one more question before we throw it to the fans. Speaking of the fans. Fans of Hellraiser and Nightbreed have deeply personal connections to these films. Do you have a particular memorable fan interaction where they've shared the impact that these films have had on them?
Oddly enough, where are we? We're Sunday today, so this was Friday. Simon will vouch for this as well as the 4 Cenobites. We all have people who walk up to us and say, "You were my favourite Cenobite." And it really is true. I can't emphasize how amazing that is for me to hear, particularly for me, because Chatterer is so close. I was very involved in the actual design of the character, so it's very personal to me. But there was a lovely lady I was chatting to, Tina, are you in here? No, possibly not, okay. And she said, you can't imagine how much this has meant to me over the years. And I think it's really weird when you have a conversation with somebody who says, you scared me to death. You scared me to death as a child. It's like, we didn't make this film for children, I swear we didn't. Thank you. And I know that these guys, it is amazing how fortunate are we as actors to, gosh, nearly 40 years later, in the case of Hellraiser, to still meeting people who were not born when we made this film, who we've had, who's touched people's lives. That's wonderful. That is something I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for.
Simon?
I think, especially with Nightbreed, we get a lot of people coming up saying that they feel represented by that film because they've always felt they were on the edges of society or pushed out to the sides, and suddenly they find something that actually brings them into the center and makes them special.
Yeah, exactly.
Lets them be heard.
And that's constant. Like almost anybody, when people come up for Nightbreed, it's always about, I was the outsider, and I just, it gave me something to feel like I could, like I was at home amongst my people. And I wish I could have lived in Midian. I wanted to be part of that, because as actors, when we're young, we're the same way. We don't really fit in with, all the high school crowd and shit. We're always the weirdos too. So,
it's true.
So, we pretty much feel that way too. But it's a consistent thing with people. You find your freaky friends that fit into your world, and I think that's what the Nightbreed world is.
And I think that happens a lot with horror fans as well. I think sometimes
true.
A lot of horror fans feel like on the outskirts a little bit, and then they found a kind of home for it. And Nightbreed gives them that voice.
I agree, and that's the beauty of this. Everybody comes together.
And I just, you're talking about fans. I remember Clive uses the word enthusiast rather than fan, which is short for fanatic. But an enthusiast, and I think we are so lucky because the horror community is amazing. We meet such fascinating, genuinely nice people, and I know George Takei, there was this whole thing about Star Wars versus Star Trek fans and so on. There was a big thing, and he did a big thing about making sure that you don't get that in horror films. Somebody who likes Freddy or somebody who likes Jason are not going to fall out over the fact that they're not going to have stand-up. I don't think, I've never seen one. Mine's the best. It's not that. Which kind of comes back, I think, to what Clive once told me about Nightbreed. Is that the trouble with human beings is we do like our tribes. We do like to belong to tribes. And the trouble is tribes tend to fall into conflict with each other. And it's like, this is what's wonderful about the tribes of the moon. They are the tribes of the moon, but they get on. They all live in Midian. They exist, being completely and utterly different to one another. So I think it comes back to what you were saying about how important Nightbreed is from that angle.
Yeah, that's amazing. Doesn't look like anyone. Oh wait.
Oh yeah.
I think it was just people wanted to be respectful.
Oh,
Wait,
okay.
so y'all were done.
Appreciate that.
Or maybe I'm just, hello, hi.
Hi.
So I kind of, especially bringing up talking about people, who maybe the movies came out before they were born. So I fall under kind of that category. Kind of a personal question, just asking. So I started watching horror movies very young, movies that had already come out, movies that were coming, and it definitely influenced me, and it definitely just kind of became the norm. But are there any specific movies, even if they're not horror related, but that maybe impacted you and your interests, or that maybe those feelings that you mentioned people having through those works, something that comes to mind for y'all individually?
For me,
Sorry.
It's a great question. For me, they are, okay, there's a number of them. I started watching horror films, so when I started watching horror films, Friday night, I was about 16, 17 years old, being allowed to stay up late. It was like Universal. So it was Frankenstein. It was the Wolfman in particular, but also the Claude Rains version of Phantom of the Opera. And this whole thing about the monsters are the victims. Frankenstein's creature is created and then immediately rejected by his creator. Larry Talbot as the Wolfman only becomes a Wolfman when he's saving a woman from an attack by a werewolf, and he's pissed and is just horrified by what he's become. So for me, as a kid who was actually really scared of the dark, I used to have these glow-in-the-dark models that I'd made, the Aurora model kits, famous monsters of Movieland. That they used, because these were my guys, because for me, the monsters are the good guys. And so I think, yeah, that had a profound effect on me.
I kind of grew up with all the Hammer horror films, but the one which isn't a Hammer horror film that sticks in my mind is Rosemary's Baby. I think I was in love with Mia Farrow and her pixie cut, and that whole kind of the paranoia that film kind of evokes is something that kind of resonated with me, and I perhaps should have taken note of for future paranoia in later life. But I just thought it was a wonderful film, and I don't think I've ever seen a film quite like it that makes you where you're suddenly aware that everybody is like on the other side. I don't know who directed Rosemary's Baby.
Roman Polanski.
Roman Polanski.
Roman
Okay.
Polanski.
We'll go there.
He has his father's eyes. Yeah, I'm lying. Yeah.
Greg?
For me, it's very different. I never liked horror because my house was horror. You know, my parents were like heavy drinkers, and it was always a fucking battle. I would wait for my dad to never come home, and then my mom would be saying he either died or she was going to kill him, and threatening, you know, just put a knife through his chest and listening to that shit. So I loved the Waltons, man. I just wanted to be a Walton. I loved Happy Days. I wanted to have a mom and dad who were just normal and we're not at fucking war.
The Partridge Family, the Osmonds.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to have a family. I was just always alone in my room waiting for the fireworks to go off. So I didn't get into horror until later.
Because I'm sorry to hear you went through that, but it is absolutely fascinating. Because I remember when I published my first book of short stories, and there's some really unpleasant stuff going on in there, and particularly in the second one as well. I remember readers coming up to me and saying, "God, you must have had a terrible family life, you know, to get all these ideas." Like, no, my family was really normal. They were, you know, mum, dad, two brothers. We were the original nuclear family. It was so normal. So I think, yeah, the complete reverse of
That's
yours.
very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm interested, and I'm sorry that you had that childhood. I think it's relatable to a lot of us. But you said that you didn't get into horror till later. What horror is it is there a specific franchise that you're a huge fan of?
You know, I think the first, well, I can't say the first. I never went to see The Exorcist. All my friends were going to see The Exorcist, and I had no interest. But later, when I was maybe 18 or something like that, HBO. Well, when I was a kid, we only had 2 channels in our hometown, right? So you didn't get much. So I was a TV addict, by the way, on top of the Waltons and Happy Days. I would immerse myself in the cartoons. I loved Bugs Bunny and like I would just be lost in that world because I was just kind of a loner. But for some reason, I had this whole one side of the family that were super religious and super judgmental. And my dad's, the whole side of the family is, you know, mom, and so they would make me go to church with them. And so the first thing that got me was The Omen. It just freaked me out because I had this, you know, this whole standard, you know, Christian story shoved down my throat and was, you know, expected to become a part of it. So The Omen really is the first one to get me. And then I remember going to the drive-ins to see The Shining, and The Shining is still one of my most watched movies over and over, so I don't know what that means or what the ramifications are of The Shining, but having parents who are going mad, perhaps, and being, you know, the kid with, who was pretty much an empath, I felt like maybe that was probably why I related to that, and just trying to stay alive amidst this madness, you know, I guess, I don't know, who knows.
Very deep. I have another question. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you in the dark.
That's okay.
Yeah,
All right.
go ahead.
So I was wondering, Clive Barker's work, at least at the time, was always boundary pushing, leaning into the extreme. And I wonder how you guys felt it may or may not have affected your careers going into something that was potentially going to be seen extreme. Because you didn't know at the time of the success that it was going to lead to. So were you at any points apprehensive about some of the things you were doing? Because now we see in indie horror lots of these extremes that are going out, but you know, how did you at any point know this was going to be successful, or were you just rolling the dice and gambling on making blood guts? And
That's a very good question, actually. And when we started filming Hellraiser, there was a lot of concern and talk about video nasties back in the 80s, and I certainly wondered if that might be where Hellraiser ended up when we were reading the script. As for whether we thought it would be successful, absolutely not. No, it was a very small budget film, and we were filming in this kind of back end of nowhere little studio in Cricklewood, and I think generally people were hoping that it might further their careers, and other directors and other producers might see them and give them work, but I don't think anybody would ever have envisaged that we'd still be here 38 years later talking about it.
Yeah, no, I think for me it's very similar. It's like, hell, it was my first movie. You know, it's like, I was going to be in a movie, and I think when, in my mind, you went to drama school, you went into repertory theatre. If you were lucky, you got onto TV, and then you got onto film. And it's kind of like, for me, like 2-3 years after leaving drama school, having done some fringe theatre and so on, I was making a film. This was just mind-blowing as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, I had already been doing films for like 10 years. And I was actually wary of doing it because it was a horror film, and you know, I was a, you know, Broadway snob. I came from Broadway, you know, worked my way up through that, and was just coming off a 3-picture, you know, deal with Paramount, and kind of saw myself as a little bit better than the horror world or whatever. But I did love the script, and I loved the character, and so that's why I did it. As to me, it would be a great character to play. I didn't know anything about Clive. As I told you, I was not a horror fan. I had never seen the Hellraiser that I think had just come out not long before that.
Yeah, 2 years before.
But you know, I signed up to do it, and I'm pretty sure I signed up for 3 movies. I signed up for a trilogy, which I really liked the idea of that too. Something, I guess, because of the success of Hellraiser, and I then find out as I got more involved, I read Cabal and was like, yeah, that's good shit. And then I found out Stephen King at the time had come out and said, I've seen the future of horror, and it is Clive Barker. So that was, you remember that?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, that was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
King was the king, and yeah, so got involved, and it was a great character, and yeah, I just wish they had let Clive make his movie and not tried to turn it into, you know, they wanted to take, what's his name, David Cronenberg?
Yeah.
David Cronenberg's character, and kind of make him a Michael Myers, you know, they wanted to bring him back to life, and then, you know, they just wanted to make it what they'd already seen work and make money, and by doing that, they kind of ruined it. But yeah, so I was a movie snob and learned to really love the genre. I mean, that's what I do movie night every Friday night with several of my friends, and it's always, we do horror every week, you know. So it's funny, I went from the complete opposite to loving it. I love all the new stuff that's coming out, like X and Pearl. I don't know if you guys have seen these, but it's just, I mean, I love this stuff now. So pretty cool to have had this in my past when I didn't have any appreciation for it.
We have time for one more question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In the advent, so you talked a lot about how limiting the SFX were for your facial acting. With the advent in the advent of CGI, if you were able to, I'm so sorry, I'm like stumbling. In the advent of CGI, if you were able to revisit those characters, would you bring a more animated performance, or would you stick to the more stilted?
I would definitely try and persuade the special effects people to work with a medium which would allow my face to move, but I would definitely not go down the CG route, because then you're putting somebody else in charge of your face, which is terrible, and you're giving somebody else your performance, really. Plus, I just like practical effects. I think most people would say that they love practical effects.
Well, see, that's interesting. I'm not sure that it's necessarily true in terms of what Andy Serkis refers to as performance capture, and it is technically known as motion capture. So his performance is translated through those little dots on the face and so on. So although the look is still there, I think the performance still comes from. I've not done it myself, but I have a friend who specializes in this, and I've seen the performance, and you can see it. It is very clearly his performance that is just translated into this dog face and that. Oddly enough, I think with Chatterer, the fact that he is so immobile is what gives him a lot of his power. Just that, and Doug's spoken about this a lot, do less, because the makeup just conveys so much. And I think just the Chatterer, just the fact that he will just chatter his teeth, there is no expression, funnily enough, gives him a lot of power. He doesn't need, the great thing is if you did motion capture, you could actually have lines and speak.
Yes, that's true. I could get my lines back. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. It has been an absolute joy to speak with you all today. Please put your hands together once again for Nicholas Vince, Simon Bamford, and Craig Sheffer. Thank you so much, all. We will be moving on to the Fright Night panel, so please go ahead and scoot on out if you're VIP. You can still hang out.